For real, you know the deal, this is uncut.
All right, we're here in the new office of Tuff City Records, and speaking to the man himself, Aaron Fuchs. Some of the extensive back catalogue right here. What are some of the titles closest to your heart as far as your proudest achievements as a record label thus far?
I was very proud to be on the scene around '82 when the electronic drum machines came on the scene. I describe it as 1,000 flowers bloomed. What happened was you previously had, all your DJs just pretty much looping or sampling, the same body of beats from the same body of records.
Yeah.
And when the electronic drum machines came in, all of a sudden, it seemed like the scope of ethnic backgrounds that comprised the DJs.
Yep.
Because hip hop is a very pan-Caribbean music. That's what made it different from, all other American black musics that preceded it. The sort of pan-Caribbean influence.
Okay.
And I mean, it was just wonderful to be working with Charlie Chase, who was Puerto Rican, Pumpkin, who was Costa Rican, Davey D, who was American black, and it was really, really reflected in their different approaches to rhythms. Wonderful time to be able to just be making music. Hip hop was incredibly small. Okay, when I got into hip hop, circa '80, the communications medium for hip hop, was a 7x5 sheet of paper called the Philip Edwards Report. Okay, he was the guy who had the bright idea to list all the stores in the metropolitan area and create just a body of what records that they were selling and distribute them around the boroughs. So when I asked Bambaataa I told him I wanted to sign an MC crew. I didn't know he'd bring me the greatest of all time, the Cold Crush Brothers. When I befriended Barry Michael Cooper because we were both, rock critics for the Village Voice, I had no idea that he had cultivated a friendship with Spoonie G, and that who was the most influential hip hop artist of the old school era. And then, the usual range of ways things happen.
Okay. So what can you tell us about your history as a music writer? That was something I wasn't aware of previously. So that's obviously music criticism has changed over the years, and it had a lot more influence back during that era, because obviously now people can listen to an album before it comes out on the computer and stuff. So when there was a stage obviously when that was the only thing you really had to go by until the record came out.
Hey, listen, it's widely known, that John Landau was able to secure management of Bruce Springsteen by writing in Rolling Stone, where he was the editor. I have seen the future of rock and roll, So he was able to parlay, there's no question about that. And I was, criticism started because of, Dylan and John Lennon, all of a sudden, lit majors, had something to write about with rock and roll. And I always had a pass because I was one of the very few guys writing about black music,
Right.
So while the review of the new Dylan album or Beatles album was always taken, there was always the review of the Wilson Pickett album or Aretha Franklin album was always available.
Right, yeah. And you were happy to take that on board.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You know, happy to be able to hang out at Atlantic Records. You know, happy to be able to really fill my kind of junkie's need for music.
Right. So do you feel it was like almost an obsession for you at that stage when you like?
No, I don't.
Okay.
It was an addiction.
Sure. And so what made you want to go from music crit to record label exec?
Well, I felt that beyond merely reviewing albums, I felt that some of the things I did, I was making A&R calls. I reviewed an Al Green album, Al Green's first album, Rolling Stone, and spoke very laudatorily about it. Watch this guy, he's going to happen. And 6, 7, 8 months later, he put out "Let's Stay Together," and the record company used my quotes as part of a campaign. So that really kind of wasn't happening among critics, and I saw it happening with me a few times, and I felt like I could trust my judgment calls, musically. In addition to which, it was, if you got into hip hop, if you wanted to make it your business in 1980, as I decided I was going to do, it wasn't competitive.
Right.
There were very few, if any, companies that saw it as something that would have long-range potential. So, and I, because I was a journalist, and I was also happened to be historically minded, and I saw it as part of the continuum of American black music tradition. I thought it was here to stay. So it enabled me to hang in there through mistake after mistake, which might have sunk me, late, had I gotten in later on. It's more competitive.
Sure. Yeah, because it was still viewed largely as a fad by the majority of the.
Yeah, and then if you were a historian as I was, you knew that was you were hearing the same things you heard about rock and roll. It's black, it's jungle music, it'll never last.
Yep.
And I had other notions.
Okay.
And it's very funny because there's that Bob Marley expression, "Who feels it knows it." It was the reverse for me. I knew it, and then felt it.
Okay.
Yeah. It was strange to me in the beginning, and then after a while, but I knew it was going to happen, and then I grew to love it.
So what was the first record that you put out?
It was a record called Beach Boy by Vertical Lines.
Right.
And it was a down tempo. What happened was I had put my trust in Barry Michael Cooper, who, he is known for writing the screenplay to New Jack City, but to this day, what he was doing around 1980 is still not sufficiently heralded. He was talking Harlem record label owners who started out into, making Jamaican music in the first place. So to be into R&B was a leap. To be into hip hop was a bigger leap, and then he was into the techno aspect of it. So what he did was amazing, and very proud to have worked with him and picked up some of his earlier recordings. And he had the spiritual side, and he made this down-tempo, like electro record, with a little doo-wop vocal and R&B vocal, and nobody wanted to know,
Oh, and you were already a fan of, you had a history of doo-wop, you were like a doo-wop fan.
Well, yeah, and in fact, it played a big part in my being able to work with Davey D when nobody else wanted to. He really was, had black music tradition in him, But, and I remember there was this iconic record man in the Bronx named Brad. In fact, he put out "Catch the Beat" by Tuff Valley.
Okay.
And he was like, he kept on, "There's no foot, man. There's no foot in that record." So, in fact, it was. So we knew that nobody wanted to really hear the record like, vertical lines. At that time, maybe it's gone on to have some kind of cult status. So,
but you weren't making any money. You weren't like selling many copies of it.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Well, that time, the economies of scale, were smaller. Even if you didn't make money, you weren't really bleeding money because you weren't, embarking on some sort of national campaign with a $100,000 video and a $100,000 promotion budget. You just want, you had a receptive local radio market, and you had a local sales market, and it was, a good way for a small businessman to, sustain. So, but that with Smurf Across the Surf, it was, we were much more in the groove, and that could be deemed to be a classic electro record, I think it may have just followed on the heels of Planet Rock, I think, so it was a little bit up tempo that way. But the beautiful thing was Africa Bambaataa did the mix. And he stripped it down and dubbed it up, and and then on the heels of further criticism by Brad, I overed the live kick drum, and I was off to the races. We made some noise locally. I had a Sony Records deal. It's now called CBS, and all those records sold because there was this incredible sales machine that was just able to. There was an expression in the music business called lose records, when you could sell a lot of records and not really know how to explain it. But they just know how to put records everywhere so that you can get impulse purchasers.
Okay.
So I had records that were on the radio and sold records for them. But the record that really secured me, to make me feel okay, rent's going to be paid for a while, bills are going to be paid, was The Godfather by Smokey G. That was a Marley Marl production. That got in daily rotation. There were two kinds of plays that hip hop got at that time. The kind of lesser kind of rotation, evenings maybe at best, and hip hop shows and dance shows on the weekend. And then there were the hits, which were integrated into daily rotation by these stations, which were really still R&B stations. They were playing hip hop. I wouldn't go so far as to say grudgingly or because they had to, but I think you could say that, and many people wouldn't argue with you. So so it was crossover in that way.
Okay.
Crossover traditionally has been from R&B to pop, but in those days with hip hop, you had a crossover from hip hop to R&B.
Yeah.
So that secured my existence as a company.
Uncut, baby. What?